Midnight Mythos. Tonight's story is true. A dream home, a smiling street, and a letter that knows your children by the way they run. The first envelope had no return address. Thick paper, careful block letters, the kind people used to write when writing was a ceremony. Inside, no greeting by name, just the house's address, like a sermon's title. "Welcome to the neighborhood," it said. And then a question that should never come in the mail. "Have you found all the secrets that the walls are keeping for me?" A family had just closed on a handsome, historic home in suburban New Jersey. A town where lawns are trimmed, routes to school are safe, and the biggest argument is sometimes about parking near the train station. The house had character, a stately facade, a porch that invited summer, rooms with the kind of woodwork you only inherit, never install. The buyers were in love. They measured for rugs. They planned where the Christmas tree would go. They wrote lists of paint colors with names like promise. Then the second letter arrived. It did not introduce itself so much as continue a conversation the family had not started. It asked about the children. It noted how many there were and what they called each other when they thought adults weren't listening. It asked if the family had filled the house with young blood, as if childhood were a liquid that houses drink. The letter wanted to know which bedrooms would belong to which child, and if the ones at the back of the house could hear the playground at dusk. The return address remained the same, nowhere. The sender signed with a title that felt older than paper, The Watcher. The family told themselves it was a prank. The real world is crowded with bored people who enjoy being cruel at a distance. They changed their routines. They told the kids less than the truth. They tried to proceed with the rational world, where contractors show up, boxes get unpacked, and a letter is only ink. But the Watcher wrote again. The letters called the house by its number, like an intimate name. They spoke about the lineage of the place, as if structures had family trees, as if plaster and brick could be bequeathed a duty. "My grandfather watched it," the letter said. "My father watched it. It is my time now." The house wanted new blood, and the house had chosen. The Watcher called the walls a choir. The vents became ears. The porch, a pulpit. The windows, 100 patient eyes. Renovations began, because that's what new owners do when they inherit someone else's taste. The first hammer fell, and the Watcher heard it. A letter noted the contractor's schedule with fussy precision, as if the house itself were filing a complaint. The writer disliked the family's plans, disapproved of changes to the kitchen, thought that certain rooms should remain untouched. The past, it seemed, had opinions about tile. Who was this person? A neighbor who had noticed too much? A prankster with a telescope and a bad heart? The family looked from porch to porch, window to window, and saw reflections of their own fear. When the wind moved a curtain across the street, it felt like a message. When a late jogger's shadow passed their lawn, it felt like a rehearsal. They did what sensible people do when the world stops making sense. They called the police. They called friends who knew someone who had dealt with something like this. They briefed the mail carrier. They looked into cameras and fences and discovered a modern truth. Nothing repels dread like spending money. They hired a private investigator to read faces and histories. They walked their street as if it were a chessboard, counting lines of sight, calculating the angle from which a pair of eyes might learn which child was which. The Watcher wrote about the kids again. The language bent like a laugh at the edge of cruelty. The Watcher could hear the names the family used in their own kitchen. The letters asked if the children were too afraid to sleep in rooms far from their parents. The writer anticipated a future in which the youngest would claim the room at the top of the stairs, the one with the best view of the street. It asked if the child would play in the basement, and if the echoes down there sounded like footsteps approaching when the lights were off. The mail became an enemy. A mailbox is an open mouth without a conscience. The family started to dread the walk down the driveway. Bills are easy to hate. Invitations, easy to refuse. But a plain envelope without a return address is a dare. Hands shook, paper sliced. The family learned to read without letting their eyes soften. The letters described a watcher standing close enough to hear laughter and private scoldings, and yet far enough to remain a rumor. Friends told the family to sell. People feel brave with other people's houses. But selling a dream home isn't like selling a couch. It means admitting you will not fight the air in your own kitchen. It means telling your children that monsters exist, and that the monsters have stamps. The family tried to move in, to claim the routines that make a house a life. Breakfast clatter, school shoes, homework at the table, the exhausted miracle of bedtime. Every ordinary noise became suspicious. The thump of a washing machine's last spin sounded like someone trying a door. The chirp of a smoke detector, low on battery, sounded like code. The hum of the refrigerator at night became the house clearing its throat. And still, the watcher wrote. "How long will you keep me waiting?" the letter asked. It had been patient, it said. It had been generous. It had lived in the house's light for years. It had tasted the air at dawn from the porch. It had watched the seasons change, like a slow-breathing animal. It was not cruel, it said. It was careful. It was the only one who truly understood the house, because the house had told its secrets the family wasn't listening for. The police could not arrest a rumor. The private investigator could not present a face. Neighbors had alibis, plausible histories, and the good fortune of living one fence over from the problem. The families on the block smiled a little too hard, waved a little too long, and behaved like citizens in a small town where being suspected is more insulting than being guilty. The street was a stage. The curtains did not close at night. Everyone knew they were background actors in a play that had only one speaking role. When the family tried to sell, the market flinched. The letters were not just an embarrassment. They were a disclosure. Would you buy a house whose walls are already spoken for? Would you bring a baby to a place where the vents are allegedly ears? Some buyers are brave when the price is right. Bravery went missing on this street. The family tried to fight by telling the truth. They explained to potential buyers that there was a story that came with the house, and that the story would arrive by mail. They were met with sharp silence. People want to be told that a problem is over, not that they're the next chapter. A letter came then that changed tone. "Do you know what lives between the walls?" the watcher asked. "Have you heard the house whisper your names back to you at night? Do you feel it lean when you make plans it doesn't like?" The watcher claimed a kind of guardianship that was not protection, but possession. It implied a duty to a tradition that no one had consented to. Grandfather, father, watcher, watcher again, had no interest in convincing anyone it existed beyond the letters. The watcher didn't want to be found. It wanted to be believed. People made lists of suspects. A neighbor who walked too slowly past the mailbox. A retired man with binoculars for birds and other things. A teenager with a talent for vicious pranks. A delivery driver who seemed to know which packages contained toys. The family stood at windows and tried on faces like masks, waiting for one to fit. None did. A face without a mail route is only a face. The children learned rules that no child should have to learn. Do not run alone in the yard. Do not answer the door, even if the voice is smiling. Do not tell the house your secrets. They learned to sleep with one ear prepared for the sound of an envelope sliding onto a table. They learned that their parents were not afraid of the dark, but of paper. How does a story like this end? It doesn't. Not neatly. The family left. The way people leave a city that stops loving them back. Houses sell, eventually. Stories settle, the way dust does. The watcher may have written again, or not. A neighborhood forgets at the speed of decor. New curtains go up. New bikes lean against the porch. New names shout at dusk. The street returns to the performance it knows best. The polite lie of normal. But sometimes, at night, if you walk a block like this one, in a town like this one, you'll feel it. The weight of a letter that hasn't been written yet. The porch light will flare. The curtain will move in a way that isn't wind. You'll see a child kneel on the couch to watch the sidewalk and know that the opposite is also true, that the sidewalk watches back. You'll remember that paper can hold a knife without cutting itself. People ask whether the watcher was real. The better question is whether the letters changed the house more than the family did. Paint chips, floors settle, children grow. A letter, if you let it, becomes a room. It rearranges furniture. It dictates where you stand to make phone calls. It tells you when to breathe. The watcher needed only two things to succeed: a mailbox and your willingness to read. The family was not weak. They were outnumbered by possibilities. There is no defense against a ghost made of grammar. Lock your doors. Replace your bulbs. Teach your children to be proud and loud and careless in the ways that keep them human. But also teach them a quieter skill. When a voice without a body asks for your attention, make it earn the cost of your peace. In the end, the watcher's greatest trick was insisting the house belonged to the past. But houses belong to whoever lives in them well. A kitchen full of laughter speaks louder than a coward's postmark. A yard scuffed by play says more than a sentence designed to bruise. A bedtime story, told with the light on, can disarm a paragraph meant to make you small. If you live on a quiet street with a handsome house and a vigilant mailbox, here is your benediction. May your letters be dull. May your walls keep nothing from you except drafts. May your neighbors be nosy in the way that makes casseroles appear when you need them. And if a thick envelope arrives that calls you by the name of your house instead of your own, open it in the sunlight, read it out loud together, and then decide what kind of story you're willing to host, because the only watcher that gets to keep a home is the one that keeps it kind. This is Midnight Mythos. If you made it this far, you're brave enough to subscribe. If you've ever received a letter that made your house feel smaller, tell me about it in the comments. And if you're listening from a quiet New Jersey street where a certain porch light is always on, look at your mailbox right now and remember the oldest defense we have against fear. We decide what comes inside.